And that was the US President Donald Trump along with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky taking questions from the reporters ahead of the high-stakes bilateral meeting. Trump clearly said that he will give good security guarantees to Ukraine and said that he is eager to meet the 7 European leaders who have also arrived on that. And like I mentioned, he said that he will work with Russia and Ukraine towards a lasting peace. One of the major highlights out of that meeting, where the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also emphasized that he is looking forward to end the war and he is looking towards a trilateral meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the US President Donald Trump as well. Trump clearly said that he will be providing Ukrainians with protection, but he did not take the bait on who has the better cards. However, he did not rule out US troops on Ukrainian soil. Trump also said that US will be involved in security assistance for Ukraine as part of a deal to end the war, but he declined to provide any additional details of what that help would look like. He again urged for lasting peace between Ukraine and Russia, and emphasized that he will be giving them a very good protection and good security. Of course, one of the talking points was also what the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was wearing, with Trump clearly complimenting him that he was wearing a militarized style pantsuit. Zelensky also thanked Trump for US weapons bought under new NATO initiative, and he said that he was grateful for the new NATO program that allows member states to buy weapons from the United States to be sent to Ukraine. Well, this meeting between Trump and Zelensky comes 6 months after the showdown in the Oval Office in February, where the Ukrainian president was clearly berated. But this time around, it seems like both the leaders were cordial with each other and complimenting the other for coming here and talking to each other before the multilateral meeting with the 7 European leaders. Zelensky also said that Ukraine is ready to find a diplomatic way to end the war. And he rather personally also thanked the US president for taking personal interest and taking major steps in ending the war in Ukraine, which has very well now entered its 4th year. Well, both the leaders seem to be on a common page where they said that they want to end the war, to stop Russia. Zelensky said we need support from American and European partners ahead of meeting the US president. Zelensky clearly said that he's looking for a reliable and a lasting peace, which was also asserted by the US president, where he said that he is looking towards a lasting peace. And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us. Susan, a lot of big takeaways from that press briefing between the US President Donald Trump and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, where Trump has clearly not ruled out any American boots on Ukrainian soil, and asserting that US will provide Ukraine good protection and good security. Tell us more.
Yeah, that was a very significant shift, considering the fact that, during his campaigning to become U.S. president, he really campaigned on non-U.S. involvement in Ukraine in any form and trying to pull the United States out. And we see how real politics and the realities on the ground sometimes change a candidate's view when they enter the Oval Office and the White House, not ruling out possibly American troops on Ukrainian soil as some kind of peacekeeping mission to work alongside the Europeans. Everything works out well. We will have a trilateral meeting. That was also significant, he said, of a meeting possibly between himself, Zelensky, and Russia's Putin. When he was asked, is this the end of the road for the United States? Basically, are you going to just flip the table over and walk away if something is not reached today during this meeting? President Trump did not take the bait on that. He said that it's never the end of the road. Lots of people have been killed in the last 4 years and last week alone. And he said that President Putin also would like it to end. Zelensky said that today there has been a lot of attacks on the part of Russia, and we need U.S. support and we need partners in Europe as well. Trump said, we're going to work with Russia and Ukraine regarding peacekeeping forces. He said we might have some kind of news about American involvement and troops on the ground in Ukraine by the end of the day today after the meeting. So that's something we're going to be looking at. Regarding security guarantees, he said there's going to be a lot of help about potential security guarantees for Ukraine. He said we will discuss those details later with European leaders who have traveled to Washington with President Zelensky. President Zelensky was asked by reporters whether or not he would cede land or continue to see Ukrainian troops die. He was polite and measured in his answer, and he said he just wants to see an end of the war in a diplomatic fashion. It was very striking that President Trump said that, quote unquote, the war is going to end. He said that twice during this press conference, really demonstrating that he believes that there is light at the end of the tunnel. The war is going to end. He said maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but he said this is a war that's going to end. He also acknowledged the fact that despite the fact that he thought this was going to be one of the easier conflicts to resolve under his second term, this has been by far the hardest. Of course, again, he mentioned that this is Biden's war. This is not his war. Just a caveat there. A lot of analysts and experts believe that while this war did start under President Joe Biden, how it ends and what happens now is really going to define one of President Trump's second term major foreign policy legacies and agenda. So he has a lot of stake when he's mediating between these two countries, of course. We're also hearing that despite the fact that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was very adamant in not ceding land, saying that his constitution does not allow him to give land away, and there needs to be a referendum, and the majority of the Ukrainian people don't agree to giving up land to Russia. There might be some security guarantees and incentives put forth by the United States and by the Europeans for Ukraine to maybe sort of move that goalpost. This is just news that we're getting just in the past few minutes or so. So a lot hangs in this bilateral meeting. Of course, a lot of solutions and outcomes, possible outcomes. We're cautiously optimistic. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but possible announcements and outcomes may come by the end of the day, and we're going to hear a lot more about it. This, according to the White House, of course.
Right, Susan. Quite a drastic change from the February meeting, of course. After 6 months, we've seen the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meeting the US President. While a lot of talks on ending the war, we have to talk about the attire that the Ukrainian president wore, a militarized pantsuit, which also was complimented by the US president, and the kind of bonhomie. Talk to us more about the body language and maybe how the dynamics have changed between both the leaders, with, of course, Zelensky also personally thanking Trump in taking interest and major steps in stopping the war, and, of course, the letter, the postcard that Zelensky bought for the US First Lady Melania Trump.
That's right, on the part of his wife. That was sort of in response to a letter that Melania Trump wrote to Vladimir Putin that was widely publicized and shared on her social media as well, telling him as First Lady in so many words that saving children in this war and the next generation is the most important thing, and sort of a plea to him in a polite way, not so much mentioning in so many words, but about those alleged Ukrainian children who have been kidnapped by Russia, apparently has weighed heavy on the First Lady's mind and conscience. And according to President Trump, that letter was received very well by Vladimir Putin. And then we saw a letter on the part of First Lady of Ukraine given to President Trump to be handed over to Melania Trump, as a gesture nonetheless. And you're absolutely right. How different was this meeting? The mannerism, the way that Zelensky was received, the way he presented himself. He wore a suit jacket. And in turn, I think President Trump respected that. He was a lot more welcoming, a lot less confrontational towards Zelensky. You may remember when he was asked who is playing the better cards in this war between Russia and Ukraine. You remember in February, one of the famous lines was Trump telling Zelensky, "You don't have the cards." When asked today he didn't take the bait, and he said, I don't want to get into that. We just want to end this war and find a peaceful solution to it. So yes, a lot more friendly. Oh,
right,
you know, you know this, our viewers know this. Everyone knows that President Trump really operates on instincts and impulse. So it's very hard to gauge how he's going to show up in a meeting until he's sort of in that meeting and he's one-on-one or in a multilateral setting. That's when he will perform the way that he wants to perform. So it was interesting.
Right, Susan, stay with us. Let's just listen in to the major takeaways out of that press briefing.
Yeah, well, we haven't done anything on that yet. If you look back and you go back long before President Putin, it was always a statement that they would never allow Ukraine into NATO. So that was a statement that was made, but we haven't discussed any of that yet. We're going to be discussing it today, but we will give them very good protection, very good security. That's part of it. Make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long term. This is very long term. We're not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. We're going to make sure that everything's good. We'll work with Russia. We're going to work with Ukraine. And we're going to make sure it works. And I think if we can get to peace, it's going to work. I have no doubt about it. I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals that we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars, I didn't do any ceasefires. The war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you, but the war is going to end, and this gentleman wants it to end, and Vladimir Putin wants it to end. I think the whole world is tired of it, and we're going to get it ended. It was, you know, I've done 6 wars. I've ended 6 wars, and I thought this maybe would be the easiest one, and it's not the easiest one. It's a tough one. We sell the equipment to NATO, and NATO does what, I don't know what the arrangement is that you have with, but I know that they want you to have the equipment. And we're getting the best equipment in the world, but they pay us for the equipment. Under Biden, it was just crazy what was going on. I believe the number is over 300. I think it could be $350 billion worth of equipment and money and everything else. And we've made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months than they made in 4 years. So the First Lady felt very strongly. She's watched the same thing that you watch and that I watch. I see things that you don't get to see, and it's horrible. But when she's got a great love of children, she has a wonderful son that she loves, probably more than anybody, including me. I hate to say it, but she loves her son. She loves children.
And well, those were some key highlights of the US President Donald Trump, where he's clearly calling for lasting peace, and he's clearly asserted that this is not the end of the road and there will be good protection, very good security given to Ukraine under the security guarantees, which the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky clearly said that Ukraine needs everything related to security guarantees. And well, our correspondent Susan Tehrani is here with us. Susan, let's also talk about how both the leaders were on the same page where they spoke about a trilateral meeting and for a lasting peace to end the war.
Yeah, very noteworthy indeed. And this was something that Zelensky and the Europeans really wanted to demonstrate, and not only to Russia, but to the world, that they're all on the same page. And with Zelensky saying that he hopes this trilateral meeting is going to take place, there is a glimmer of hope that perhaps they'll reach some kind of agreement that's good enough for the Russians to also come to the negotiating table. Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy, yesterday on the Sunday shows, said that it was very unusual and very rare to see the Russians sort of become a little more mild in their demands during those negotiations with the United States and Alaska. He didn't give much detail, but there's no doubt that that kind of message and that kind of posture is definitely, either it's been already relayed to Ukraine and Zelensky, or it's going to be relayed a lot more And they've talked about it, and they think that perhaps they're at a place where this trilateral meeting could eventually take place. Whether or not it's going to happen sooner than we think, again, that's a big question mark. We have to see what Zelensky and by extension the Europeans are going to agree to when it comes to Russia demands. Where do they stand? How, and they're wondering how much, to what extent they can get a better deal from President Trump as well. There's no doubt that's also on the agenda. But nonetheless, it appears that, yes, they are all on the same page. They do want to end this war. On what terms? And is it going to happen? We'll have to wait and see.
Right, Susan, stay with us. We have some news coming at this point of time. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will be speaking by telephone with Russian President Vladimir Putin 3 days after they met and following the White House talks with the leaders of Ukraine and the 7 European Union leaders. Trump told reporters that he just spoke to President Putin indirectly and that we are going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. This as he met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office. Right, Susan, like we were talking there, I also want to ask you that Trump did not really answer the question once the reporter said that is it a fair deal for Ukraine to give up land in return for peace?
Yeah, he didn't. He dodged that question. He dodged a few other questions, and he sort of reverted and diverted back to a lasting peace is what's important, and the war is going to end, and there has to be a diplomatic solution to the ongoing crisis. And those were the sentences that he repeated. He's been very measured, perhaps some might say out of character, when dealing with the media and the press. When it comes to these talks, he was quite tight-lipped during that so-called press conference after meeting with Vladimir Putin as well. And you could tell that he didn't want to give much away, which was sort of stamped by his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, again yesterday during the Sunday shows when was constantly asked about, what are the negotiating terms, what are the terms, and how is, notably these security guarantees and these land swaps are going to work. He said, I don't understand why anyone would think, or you would think, or the media would think that we would negotiate in public in front of the international community. These are private discussions, and they're going to fall through if we share any more. And it appears that the White House is really on the same page regarding that. You usually get some snippets from President Trump when it comes to talks like this, but he's been very tight-lipped. And yes, he's diverted many questions, that being one of them.